Welcome to Big Blend Radio's Food, Wine, and Travel Show, where we go across country and travel the world with members of the International Food, Wine, Travel Writers Association. Let's go. So welcome everyone. Every second Friday, we have our International Food, Wine, Travel Writers Association podcast that we do with the different members. Every second Friday is always with a travel writer. And today we've got Joe Clark back on the show. In fact, this is how we first met Joe, was with the International Food, Wine, Travel Writers Association being on this podcast. And now she's got her own podcast. Joe goes everywhere. And today she is joining us on the show to talk about Sonoma County, but really mostly 4 parks to visit, which she says are her 4 top parks from her experience earlier this year. And you can read her article. It's up on nationalparktraveling.com. The link is in the episode notes, as well as Joe's links to her websites, which you've got Have Glass Will Travel and recipestravelculture.com. So did I get it all, Joe?
I think so.
Yeah. How are you doing?
And I'm also Joe Goes Everywhere on Instagram. If
That's
anybody's
right.
on Instagram, find me.
Yeah, or Have Glass Will Travel on Facebook.
That's true.
She goes everywhere with a glass. Is that it?
That's it. I don't want somebody to say, well, I would share this wine with you, but I only have one glass.
No.
So I like to have my own ready.
Oh, well, there you go, girl. Well, listen,
Okay.
Sonoma is a wine area, and that's you were on the show talking about, on your own podcast, talking about going on that wild, sidecar ride through the vineyards, through Sonoma County. So that was one of the big tasting experiences you have. But I love that you saw the nature side of Sonoma County, because it is beautiful.
It is gorgeous. And it's different. One place will be just mild hills and lots of greenery and lots of native plants. And then you've got the seashore. And, I'm a beach girl. I walk on the beach every day. And so the Point Reyes National Seashore, and I love lighthouses. So there's this beautiful little lighthouse there. Very different. I'm used to these huge, tall lighthouses that you go inside and climb the circular stairway to heaven, hundreds and hundreds of steps. And this one is out on a point right in the ocean. So you go down to get to the lighthouse, and all the steps are on the outside. So you go down 313 steps. And yes, that's how many there are. I didn't have to count them. They're actually stenciled, and each step is numbered. And in between the steps, you'll have a lot of steps, 20 or 30 steps. Then you'll have a slanted concrete sidewalk to the next set of steps. So you're just constantly going down or up. That was the hard part, coming back up.
So that's the cool thing is, that you've got this rugged coastline, different than Myrtle Beach.
It is.
It's very rugged and misty and mystical and magical, isn't it? Different.
It is very different. Ours is flat and wide, and you just walk down the beach forever and ever. And out there, these areas that I've been to have had the tall, rocky coastline, drops, and the bluffs overlooking. We walked along the top edge here in the Point Reyes National Seashore Park. We walked the top shoreline, or well, not the shoreline, but the bluff, looking down at the shoreline. And that's when we would spot the seals. We had all these seals that were laying in the sun, sunning. Some of them, a lot of them, just belly up, just nothing but that white belly up to the sun.
Aww.
And then some were turned over and had the brown. And I don't know if the brown was soaking up more heat and they got hot, or if maybe flies or something will bother them. But some of those little seals, you'd think they weren't moving at all. And all of a sudden you'd see this one flipper, and he would flip sand up onto his own back. And they were so cute to watch.
We were so lucky when we were there. It was in March. The wildflowers had started coming out for
Uh,
spring. It was the beginning of spring. We were like the beginning of March, and we it was just amazing. We saw baby tule elk and tule elk twice, and elephant seals, which they pretty much are there February
yeah,
through March, and you can't go down to them, but I mean, those giant noses. I mean,
yep,
and they're so loud and funny. They're characters, like you're saying. To
they
watch them
are.
is just a pure joy. And what I loved about that park was how the trees were windswept. And you had some great
Yeah,
photos of that too, like how um, those.
yeah, they're like,
I know it's like my hair in the morning. It,
I can relate.
yeah, it's like I wake up like that. I'm one of those trees, but the pines there and just the different. It is different how you get the pastures and the cattle and everything out there too.
Yeah,
You got a lot of good cheese out in that region. I'm just saying to go with
yeah,
that
we
wine.
found a cheese shop
No,
on the way from Sonoma to Point Reyes. We it was a long drive, a couple of hours in all, and we found a cheese shop along the way.
Bodega Bay, probably Bodega Bay. Maybe I'm not sure. There's
This
Bodega Bay,
was
and then there's also Inverness is a little town out there, but
that, that might be it. This was between Petaluma and
mhm.
Point Reyes,
There's
so somewhere along
Benicia.
that long
Uh-huh.
stretch of road.
Yeah, there's cheese shops there. I know exactly. Yes. Yes. And Petaluma's beautiful too.
It is,
Those that architecture is,
yeah,
yeah,
gorgeous,
amazing.
just gorgeous. And so that deserves a day. We went to one of the museums there, an art gallery and museum in Petaluma, another day, and so we saw some restaurants there that we would have liked to have tried, and that's something to plan for because you sure can't stop and spend time there and then still go all the way out to the seashore. And that was the prime goal that day, was the seashore and the lighthouse.
Mm,
But we did go back to Petaluma another day to explore.
that's
Lots of cute
awesome.
shops.
Hmm. I I thought the whole area was just we kept going back and back and back to different places and didn't want to
Uh-huh.
leave,
Yep.
but when you were talking about walking on that bluff, I think we walked on the same area, like looking at your photos, but there was one that you're walking, it was like walking on a giant finger going out into the ocean. And there were
Yeah.
wildflowers all along, and you're looking down, you're like, wow,
Not
look at
for
that.
us.
Yeah, I'm
we
like,
we had
dude,
we had a few yellow flowers, and I think there were a few purple flowers, but
sure.
we were there in October, so
Yeah,
there we
fall
weren't
season.
missing the full flower experience. So
Well, I'm just saying, everybody
I
start
need to go
planning
back.
it. Well, right now is a good time to see the whales.
Yeah.
November through February is also a really good time to go. It's cold. It is cold. Wear layers, but it is gorgeous. One thing, and it's actually connected to uh, the Golden Gate National Recreation Area as well. So there's a whole drive you can do up the coastline that is
Oh, that would
gorgeous.
be fun.
Yeah, and then do Muir Woods National Monument. Anyway, don't get me started. There's so much. You went to Jack London State Historic Park, and this to me, this is a place I really want to go to.
It is so interesting, and we had the best guide. Kate was just amazing. She knows everything there is to know about the man. She took us all through the ranch and made sure we didn't miss anything. Um, she got the keys and got us in the back sides of houses that weren't open yet. They would have been open later in the day, but she got us in early so that we didn't miss anything. Um, and just his story from childhood on, she knew his story, um, his
Mm,
his story with the wife, and how they enjoyed traveling, how he became ill, and I think it was mercury poisoning. Don't quote me, but I think that's what she said, was that he finally died of mercury poisoning because of some natural remedy he was taking, and it built up in his system and finally killed him.
Wow.
Yeah, very
Wow.
interesting man though. The just his vision of the ranch and planting the vineyards and the orchards, um, the rock house that they were building, that wolf house, because he wrote so much about wolves, people started calling him Wolf. So this was Wolf House, and it was almost finished. And each night, I think it was the foreman of the construction group that would come and collect all of those rags from varnishing the
Hmm.
floors and the woodwork. When he missed one night, and the house burned to the ground, other than the rock walls, and that's what still
Oh.
stands, or just the ruins of that house.
Mm.
Uh, they had insurance, but not nearly enough.
Yeah.
He it seemed he always had money, financial problems, and so they had spent what they had to build this, but then they didn't have enough for the insurance.
Oh.
So then it couldn't be rebuilt. So they ended
Mm.
up living in the cottage until he died. And he died
Oh.
in the sun porch of that cottage.
Wow.
And many
Wow.
years later, his sister or stepsister, half sister, but his sister died on that same porch.
That's wild.
Yeah,
Oh,
because
wow.
she came and stayed there.
I'm going to make a map of all these literary destinations,
Yeah, yeah,
because it's, if you're an avid, reader and, book lover, bookworm, like we are here, I want to go to all those places. And it's just these stories
right.
of these writers. And Jack London, he traveled so much and he was a correspondent that people forget that he was a war
A
correspondent.
war correspondent. Yeah, yeah. There
Hmm.
are pictures of him and his portable typewriter in the case. Those are on display in the museum at Beauty Ranch, and it's just amazing. And you and I have talked. When I was in Corning and Elmira, of course, Elmira was Mark Twain's spot.
Yeah, that's
So
right. Oh my gosh, you've had a good year of this, haven't
I
you?
have. Two major authors that I read growing up, as and have always known. And I've been to both places this year, just this
Wow.
fall.
Wow, it's amazing. It's amazing how things can, transpire, And I know you've had a busy year. You really have.
I
But
have.
I'm a little bit on this jealous side because number one, this is one of my favorite places. But you also went to the Sonoma Botanical Garden. So is that in Sonoma itself, the Botanical
Just
Garden?
outside, yeah, just outside town.
I don't think I've been there.
It actually, when it's between, because we went to that the first day that we were headed into Sonoma, and then once I got my bearings and knew where things were, when we left Sonoma to come out to Jack London Park, you went right by Botanical
Wow.
Garden. So it was a very
Oh, that's cool.
convenient. It was in a convenient place.
I love going to gardens because I'm a plant lover, a book lover, a wine lover. I mean, this is the joys of life, right? A
Yeah,
park
yeah,
lover, obviously, but when you go to a botanical garden, it's so neat to see what grows there versus what's growing in your neighborhood and what
yeah.
similarities there are as well. So,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
fun.
and
I recognize so many plants when I'm traveling and I go places. I'm like, I know that one and that one and that one. We have those. Or I'll see something and say, that looks a lot like something
mm,
else, but not quite. And it'll turn out that it's maybe a cousin, something that has adapted to live in South Carolina, but it maybe came from a plant that is in New York.
ah, see, that's the thing. They all have stories. They
They
all have
do.
stories. They do. Um,
And this
so the
botanical garden, I didn't know until I got home and read through all of my material that on Wednesday evenings they have wine and music in the garden. And we went on a Sunday, so I missed that totally, but we were in town and could have gone on Wednesday night. So again, I have to go back. I missed something.
I think you're going to
I
have
need
to
a
go back.
do-over.
Exactly, exactly. This is an important one. So she's got to
Yeah,
go back to the botanical garden, Sonoma State Historic Park. So this is interesting. So it gets into a little history of even the community coming together.
it does. And I didn't even know there was a historic park right downtown. We'd gotten in town and we were walking around the square and looking in some of the shop windows. And all of a sudden, there's a state park with barracks and uh, a mission church and all kinds of buildings there. So we started wandering through and discovered that it was actually the Sonoma State Historic Park, and it's just right downtown. But they had uh, displays inside, museum style displays, and a gift shop inside of some of the old buildings. And then they said, have you been in the mission? The mission's just the next block down. So of
Yeah,
course we went down there and went through the mission. And then we found out with that same ticket for the mission, because the state park was free, but the mission you paid, and then there were um, other things that were attached to that same um, admission price,
hmm,
like Vallejo's Adobe Ranch and his ranch house. There was a
that's
ranch
cool.
where he lived. So all of those that day were free admittance once you'd paid to go in the mission.
That's cool. That's it's all connected and within a historical park. So it's all like, what's, it's the same thing like for Point Reyes, or if you get your pass to go to the Golden Gate National Recreation Area, then Point
Uh-huh.
Reyes is all connected, which is great. And with Sonoma, that historical park that's very similar to in San Benito County, which is south. It's in the central part, but next to Pinnacles National Park in the town. This is a historic village, which literally is a park. It's San Juan Bautista. They have a
Oh,
mission, and
nice.
it's connected with the plaza, and all the history of where you were is actually connected to this town. Marin County, which is right next to Sonoma, is where Vertigo, not Vertigo, but there's another one, Candlestick Point, that was filmed out there where she jumped out something, it's one
Some
of
of
those,
Hitchcock's work.
yeah, it's one of those crazy stories, but Vertigo is just down the hill in that historical park. So California
Interesting.
has one of the most robust state park systems in the country. I mean, they have hundreds of parks, historical parks like what you've experienced, that really shows the history, and those old hotels and the old, all those old buildings and missions, very prominent all throughout the state. Um,
Things that were
but I,
built in the 1830s. Just
yeah, it's a
amazing
little younger history, unless you're talking Native
than
American
I'm
history.
used to.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're used to like the Revolutionary War and things like that. But
right.
unless we're talking, our indigenous peoples, that is the oldest history we have. Um, but yeah, it's a little different, isn't it? Going from the South to
It is.
California, Northern California, it's a little different history, having the missions, and you'd have churches on your side, and over there they have missions, so
Right, right.
um it's cool. I love California history because it's the crossroads of cultures. Then, also the Mexican culture and the Spanish cultures that were there. Definitely the Spaniards came through there. So you were at the crossroads, the California crossroads, and lighthouse
Interesting.
history, maritime history.
Yeah.
So yeah, Point Reyes National Seashore is where Drake, Sir Francis Drake, uh, crashed his little golden hiney, the golden hind, his I'm not saying it correctly. Now I don't remember the real name. I've just always called it his golden hiney, his ship, and he
Yeah.
tried to take California over for the Queen, and that didn't work. And then
Yeah.
he made the
I
Spaniards
can
mad
see
again,
that.
and another war came out of that. But yeah, where you were so much, when you think about all that history, it blows my mind, you know, and it's such a beautiful area. And you learn history and have another sip of wine, go for a walk in nature. I mean, this is awesome stuff.
It
So
is.
where did you stay?
I stayed at the El Pueblo Inn, which is walking distance to most anything you'd want to do, or um, it's very convenient. They have a wonderful area at night. We come in after being gone and touring all day or hiking all day. We'd come in and I would head right for the hot tub and met a lot of nice people out there
Hot
at the hot
tubs.
tub, a lot of other tourists. Metallica stayed at this inn.
Oh,
Back
wow.
during COVID, they didn't let it out where they were going or what was happening, but the group was performing at one of the wineries. And we talked about this on an earlier podcast when we were talking about the wineries. One of the ones that I went to, they had this big concert, and it was, of course, videoed and then shown on, I guess, on live
Oh,
feed, maybe. But they stayed at the El Pueblo. So, if it's good enough for Metallica, it's good enough for me.
I'd say why not, man? That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
awesome. Actually, we had their manager on our show once years
that's
ago. Joe
interesting.
says, oh, I'm not gonna. He wrote a memoir, and he's a fun guy. I mean, it was just really interesting how Metallica was found out. How they were discovered is a whole other story, and but that's another podcast. But that's so cool. Like, well,
Oh,
that
you
is
need
a
to put
music
that link
area.
in the show notes.
I
Now
should.
everybody's going to want to hear about Metallica.
Well, I know it. The manager was hysterical, man. He cracked me up. His story comes from doing albums in flea markets and then knowing music so well and being able to import things that people weren't getting here. That people are like, you need
How
to now
cool.
just start doing albums. So he did, and then he ended up in, managing Metallica. Was the big band.
How cool is that?
Yeah, it's a really cool entrepreneurial story,
Yeah.
So but I was gonna say Suzuka, but it's not, it's John Suzuka. Anyway, everyone can Google that. But that
But they
that whole
play,
area is good
yeah.
for music. That whole region is
Yeah,
a
a lot of the
music
wineries
haven.
have musical groups that come and play, and they have concerts periodically.
Yeah.
California apparently has some strange rules about how often wineries can have public events, and it's like, I'm not used to that. Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, our wineries have live music like every Saturday, every other Sunday. It's party time.
Well, California is known to have laws. I'm just saying,
A
Attorney Ward
lot of them
Heinrichs is on
apparently.
our show every month, and he's always said, well, there's another new
And it
law.
keeps him busy.
It does. And I said, well, when you moved to California, did you know? He goes, uh-huh.
He knew he
He's
would have lots of work. He'd
yes.
never he'd never be bored.
No, exactly, exactly. It's hysterical. I always tease him about that. Well, it sounds like you had an awesome, awesome
I
time.
did.
And
Oh, and
you
let me
know,
tell you some
yeah, yeah.
before we go, I want to tell you one more thing about the El Pueblo, other than that they have a nice breakfast every morning. Each room has a screened porch that overlooks the garden and the fountains. It's
Oh,
like
I
built
love
in
the
a
gardens.
square around that. So
Yeah.
it was pretty neat. We come in and had stopped at the grocery store and just picked up some cold cuts and some cheese and some crackers, and we just make a plate of cheese and meat and crackers and glass of wine and sit out on our little screened in porch and be perfectly happy.
Wow. No, it sounds awesome. You made me a little homesick for that region
Well,
and all the
maybe
oak
time
trees
to
and
plan another trip.
okay. Actually, 2025, we will be going through there. Absolutely. It's your fault.
It's my fault.
Yeah,
When
yeah.
when are you going? What month?
September.
Not till next September. Maybe I need
End
to
of
start
August,
working
September.
on a trip and we can meet up out there.
For wine on the beach. In
Yeah.
fact, listen, I'm not going to tell the park rangers, but we did in fact have wine at sunset at Point Reyes. Yep. And it was fantastic. It was, and a full moon, like you saw the moonrise. I filmed the
Oh
moon.
yeah.
was it the moon? It was a sunset. It was the sunset, but it looked like a moon. But it was absolutely gorgeous. We had good wine. I can't remember if it was the moon or the sun, but it was sunset. But yeah.
Maybe it was the wine from Kenwood, which is the Jack
Oh,
London wine.
oh, we like that. We like that.
Yeah,
Hmm. I like that. Now, you just going back to the Mark Twain, and since you're on the International Food Wine Travel Writers Association show, everyone we call it IFTWA, and you can go to IFWTWA.org. You went to their conference this year and you came back with so much coverage on upstate New York.
I did.
Do you recommend their conferences for travel writers, photographers, and even just the destinations themselves?
Oh yeah, yeah. The definitely if you're a travel writer or a travel writer wannabe, uh, I would recommend joining IFTWA. There's a lot to learn. They have great conferences. Um, you make good contacts. Some of the contacts that I've made in IFTWA and a couple that I met other travel writers when I was in New York and in Corning for the conference, people that I met there when I said, next month or two, I'm going to be going to Napa or Sonoma or just some combination of that area. They were very quick to say, well, you need to contact this person and this person. So they
Oh,
gave me
wow.
contact names of people who um, maybe are convention bureau
Okay.
leaders, but they had names of people, the Chamber of Commerce contacts. But those are the people then that you can contact and say, I want to come to that area. What can you do to help me? Where are places that you recommend I go? Where are
Mm.
some places maybe that don't get a lot of promotion from other writers, but I'm always looking for the ones that are
The
not the
hidden gems.
underdog, but those little hidden gems. Like in Sonoma, this is where I took we took a half day cheese and butter making class, and it was a blast. And then we had cheese to eat all week, so we had our little lunches. We had crackers and bread. We'd get croissants at breakfast and put a croissant in our bag and some of our cheese in a cup, and away
And
we
a
went,
cup.
ready for
Did I just
lunch.
hear and a cup? What's going on with that cup?
Well, you never know what's in my cup.
Okay. Well, on that note,
Those
cheers.
days, cheese.
Cheers. Well, it is always fun having you on the show, Joe. Can't wait. Hope you're going to go to the conference next year with IFTWA.
It's in near New
Lafayette.
Orleans,
Yeah,
Lafayette, Louisiana. So
South Louisiana, Southwest Louisiana, and home to boudin. You're going to try boudin, which
I
is like
have
a
tried it.
sausage. Yeah, you've had it. All right,
Yeah,
and all
yeah,
kinds
and
of good
I'm
food. And
looking forward to the crawfish etouffee.
yeah, that's going to be your thing. Yep.
I
Are you?
love that.
She's going to start, comparing notes between South Carolina and Louisiana when it comes to seafood, right? I see that
Yeah,
happening.
definitely.
Zydeco breakfast. That's the thing. I want to do a Zydeco breakfast. Like,
You're going to meet me in Lafayette?
you never know. You never know where we might end up.
I think you should come.
I wish we could. I know that, well, it depends on the timing. For some reason, I thought it was February, but it's not. But the International Food Wine Travel Writers Association Board of Directors will be on Big Blend Radio talking all about the conference. So stay tuned for that, and also keeping everybody up to date on what's going on with IFTWA and all their great programs. They have so many great programs, webinars, you name it, networking events. So you'll hear about that in February. That's
Wine
why
tasting.
Lafayette was stuck in my brain. Wine tasting. Yep, there's
We
all
do,
kind of
yeah,
good
we do
stuff.
wine tastings. We have the wine sent to us, and then we get on a Zoom call and we all taste the wine and talk to the winemaker
Ooh,
and
sounds
learn all
fun.
about the place.
Sounds
So
good.
yeah,
Sounds good.
lots of fun.
Everyone, keep up with Joe at haveglasswilltravel.com, recipestravelculture.com. Also go to IFWTWA.org. All the links are in the episode notes as always. So much fun reminiscing about some of my favorite places and learning about new ones too. So thank you so much, Joe.
Thank you. You have a great time and a good week, the rest of
You
your week.
too. Happy end of 2024.
Happy end of and beginning of a new year. And
Yay.
it won't be long. Those days are coming fast.
Thank you for listening to Big Blend Radio's Food, Wine, and Travel Show, featuring members of the International Food, Wine, Travel Writers Association. We encourage you to visit their website. We say IFWTWA, which is IFWTWA.org. You can also follow us at bigblendradio.com. Happy travels, everyone!